Number 2.
I live in a decently big city in Indiana. I'm 20 now, and the events that I'm about to tell happened in 2008. So I was about 12 or 13 years old, and I was the only girl that was in this little group. At this time, my 3 friends and I lived one street away from another friend, my friend Terry being the one who lived in the middle of where all of our houses were. This usually meant that whenever we hung out, it was usually at his house or mine, seeing as mine was the second closest to everyone. A little bit of backstory about the house he lived in. Another person we knew, who was more of an acquaintance than a friend, had an uncle who lived in that house before Terry moved in, and he had a serious heart problem. He didn't really talk to her or her family too often, so it wasn't strange if he went a week or 2 with no contact. He had a heart attack in the kitchen one day and hit his head on the corner of one of the countertops and bled out. After 3 weeks, someone from her family decided to check on him and found his body. A few years later, the house went up for rent and Terry's family ended up moving in without knowing until after they did the history of what happened. Anyway, we were kinda different from all the other kids at the time. We wore all black and listened to heavy metal, and so we really only had each other during middle school, seeing as most of the other kids at the time were trying to be popular, so they could fit in and find where they belonged, and they usually stayed away from us. Anyway, this particular year, a lot of strange things happened. I went to one middle school, and my friends Dave and Ben went to another, and Terry went to another, despite us all living in the same school district. This will make more sense later on, so please bear with me on this seemingly random backstory. Terry's birthday is during October, and because of this, we always threw a Halloween/scary themed party for him every year. This year, we decided to play with a Ouija board because of the history of the house with that girl's uncle. Well, after about an hour of us scaring each other, we decided to take it seriously and asked the board if there was anyone there. It spelled out the word basement. Being preteens, we decided, hey, let's go in the basement and see what's down there. So we do just that and went down there and started looking around. It was one of those basements where the ground is dirt and the walls are water damage from years of being neglected, making it super creepy to be down there alone. Well, we decided to look in the back room where the circuit breaker was and look around. Dave found a loose brick in the wall and pulled it out and found an old photo of a man wearing something like a sun hat, like what Amish men wear. I'm not sure what they actually call it, so I apologize. He showed it to the rest of us and we respectively got freaked out. So we decided to take his mum's cell phone and leave it down there to record to see if we could capture any voices. We left and went upstairs to eat some pizza while we waited and went back to retrieve the phone. We didn't capture anything special, but as we were listening to the recording, his older brother decided to scare us by screaming behind us. After that, we decided to go into his garage and try to capture something in there on her phone. Now, Terry's garage door for the car did not work and could only open enough for someone to crawl beneath and made this awful noise if you tried to open it even that far. Out of precaution, we decided to lock the door we came in through and made sure the actual garage door was all the way closed so his brother couldn't scare us again. We decided to take nails his dad had on his workbench and place 2 of them side by side in each corner to see if anything would move them, and we all stood in the middle of the room. We turned the lights off to make it more atmospheric, but the light from his house came through from the door, so we weren't completely in the dark. After about half an hour of asking questions, we turned on the lights and saw that each set of nails formed an X formation. We were freaked out, and we decided to listen to the recording, and towards the very end, we heard this deep, gruff man's voice say,
"I want him."
Now, this made us all so uncomfortable that we wanted to leave. We started to head for the door, and Dave asked,
Where's Terry?"
So we all look around, and he had disappeared. The garage door was still shut, and even if it wasn't, we obviously would have heard it if Terry tried to open it because of the horrible noise it made, and the wooden door leading back to his backyard was still locked from the inside. We ran back into the house and immediately told his mother what happened and played the recording over again. Throughout the whole recording, you could hear Terry's voice asking questions. That is, up until the point where that man's voice said, "I want him." Hearing the man's voice, his mum began to panic and we all began to search around the house for him, in closets, under the beds, behind the couches, in the tub, and in all the rooms including the basement. After an hour of searching, she ends up calling 911. As she's on the phone with the dispatcher, Terry walks down the stairs, gripping his head and obviously confused.
How did I get upstairs?
He asked once he came down. His mum told the dispatcher that we found him and hung up and hugged him. Then she yelled at him for hiding and scaring us all to death, and he just gave her a confused look. He told her that the last thing he remembered was being in the garage with us, and he suddenly woke up under his parents' bed, which we checked at least 4 or 5 times. After the officer came and took a report, we all decided to call it a night and put in a movie and fell asleep in the living room. Early the next morning, we all said goodbye and went home. Soon after, all 4 of us began to notice strange things happening in all of our houses. Things disappearing, hearing TVs turn on in different rooms when no one was in them, hearing footsteps when no one else was home or asleep, stuff like that. In my house, for some reason, I had the worst of it, to the point it began to affect my parents and dogs as well. One day, I came home from school and the only ones home were my mum and myself because my dad at the time was working second shifts, so he left for work an hour before I got off from school. My mum picked me up from school every day, meaning that the only ones home were the dogs. When we walked in, we saw that all the food from the fridge was placed on the kitchen table. We called my dad, thinking someone broke into the house, and he came home within 20 minutes and searched the entire house while my mum and I waited outside. Once he was done, he came outside and said he didn't see anyone and went back to work. My mum and I spent the next hour putting everything back in the fridge, trying to figure out how it happened to begin with. The next day, the same thing happened, but it was all the things from the freezer were on the table this time. Jump ahead to Christmas Eve, and my dad and I were watching TV while my mum was in her room wrapping presents. All of a sudden, we saw a bright flash of light toward the top of the tree before hearing a loud crash. I went and looked and saw that the porcelain angel we had at the top of the tree had cracked and shattered all over the floor. My dad flipped out and asked me if he thought our house was haunted like he did. I said yes and told him what happened at Terry's party, and he said that because we all used the Ouija board, whatever it was that talked to us was following all of my friends and I. A year later, Terry moved away from all of us because of everything that was going on in his house, and ironically, moved right next to a cemetery. We could only see him on the weekends when his mum could either drop him off at one of our houses or pick us up to bring us to their house. In 2009, I lost a week of my life and had no memories of what occurred during that time. One of my friends from the school I went to, Annabelle, who was also Terry's girlfriend at the time, she said that I had dark rings under my eyes and that they were always bloodshot during class, and I would take my pencil and carve it into the back of my hands until they bled. I still have the scars, but I can't remember what happened. We stopped being friends for months because of that, and because Annabelle was so afraid of me. The day I became myself again, I was riding home in the car and was listening to the radio when they said the date, which is when I realized I completely had no recollection of the week prior. That same day, I realized I had a busted blood vessel on the white of my right eye in the kind of shape of a star. I spiraled into a deep depression because I thought I was going crazy, and I lost touch with Annabelle, Dave, Terry, and Ben. Months passed without me talking to any of them, and I completely isolated myself from my family. One day, Terry decided to come visit me to find out what was going on with me and to make sure I was alright. He got on his bike and started making his way to my house. He was on the sidewalk outside the cemetery when a man in a gold Cadillac swerved onto the sidewalk and hit him. He ran out of his car and left the scene, and someone called 911. He died 3 times on the way to the hospital before the EMTs were finally able to stabilize him. I found out the next day, and Annabelle called me and told me he was going to hospital, and I was devastated. I blamed myself because he was making his way to my house to make sure I was okay. Dave and Ben came with my parents and I to the hospital, and we spent the rest of the day with them. We talked about what happened since his party, and we decided once he was released from the hospital, We were going to buy sage, and together we would go to each of our houses and smudge every room. He was allowed to go home after a month of rehabilitation, and we cleansed all of our houses. Weird stuff still happens to us all, but it's nowhere near as terrifying and life-threatening as it was. I live in the house next to the cemetery now, and one Terry used to live in. It's much more quiet and calm here, but from time to time I can faintly hear something in the basement or voices in my room. Sadly, I lost all contact with Ben, Annabelle and Terry, and rarely talk to Dave due to unrelated events. Dave and I seem to be the only ones still having problems with what happened 7 years ago. I wanted to share this story to help others understand that using Ouija boards and provoking spirits is dangerous. It almost killed my friend, and it almost killed me. Please, take caution if you do decide to dabble with these things. This by far was the scariest set of events that has ever happened to me. Number 1. I worked with Sheila for about 3 years when this happened. Sheila was a 53-year-old widow, mother of 2, and her kids were grown. She lived out of state with her own 2 children when this happened. Sheila got a home computer, and having heard several people talk about it, she decided to get back into the game by signing up on a few dating sites. Let me preface this a little bit more. Sheila was attractive enough, not ugly, not pretty, just average I would say. However, since her husband died, she felt fat, unworthy of love, and ugly. It's silly to me, but who am I to judge? Anyway, within a few days of signing up, Sheila received several messages, many from men much like her, hardworking, average looks with middle-class lives. Many of them, for whatever reason, were not what she was looking for though. Sheila and I were pretty good friends, so one night, while at home, she sent me an email with a link of the profile of the newest of her would-be online suitors. The instant I saw his profile, I thought, whoa, out of her league. He said he was 21 years younger than Sheila. He was strapping, good-looking, muscular, and wealthy. He graduated from Oxford University, owned an architecture firm, and travelled all over the world. I didn't want to hurt my friend or discourage her, so I just replied,
Heck yeah, he looks great. Wish a guy like that was interested in me.
The next morning, at work, we giggled and talked about the new man in Sheila's life. Again, I didn't want to hurt her, but something did not feel right to me. She printed off some of the emails they exchanged. Here is a sample, and for whatever reason, I held on to them.
Hi, pretty woman. I like to see your smiley face. It will make me happy the day I can see it in the flesh. You're so pretty, like a flower grown in my yard.
You're so sweet, thanks. I appreciate your compliments.
No complimenting, just the truth from my lips. Where do you stay? Do you have work to go to? What things occupy you? You have little ones running around at your feet?
Thanks again. You have such a nice face. You're very handsome. I do not have little ones running at my feet, and by the way, it sounds funny when you say it that way. But yes, I have children. They're grown up with their own families and live in Maryland and Oregon. I don't get to see them much. I have some health problems, so I don't travel very often. I would like to though. Anyway, I do work. I work for a group of healthcare providers as a manager. As for what occupies my time, I see movies, mostly on Netflix. Going to the movies alone is, well, lonely. I like to read romance books, watch TV, play games on the computer, and go shopping out to eat with my girlfriends. What about you?
I work so much, I don't have any time for fun stuff. I still can't believe I'm so lucky that women with beauty like you would talk to me.
I don't mean to pry, but your way of writing is kind of unique. Where were you raised? Your profile says you live in New York. That's a bit far for me as far as dating someone is concerned, but I do like having a friend to come home and talk to.
I was raised in France. I moved to the US of A when I went to university. I do live in New York, but you're not too far for me to travel to see my flower. I can come to you. Do you like shopping? I'll take you to your favorite store and buy you what you desire.
As for you, you're so handsome. I don't know why you'd want someone like me. And you don't have to buy me anything. Please, just be my friend. As I stated, I do get lonely.
Please write to me your phone number.
Sheila did provide her phone number, but I won't put it here.
Thanks, my sweet love. I'll call you tomorrow. What time can I call you, my love?
Anytime after 6 p.m. Talk to you then. Looking forward to it.
Me too, sweet love.
That was one of their first few exchanges. Sheila was over the moon when she came back to work. The day after, they spoke on the phone for the first time. She told me all about how he was in Amsterdam, working on a project for a university to build a theatre designed by him. She told me how he drives a Corvette and how much fun it would be to ride along the beach in a fast sports car. Something her very practical husband never would have done. She had a glow I had never seen about her. She told me that for all the love she had for her husband, she'd always wished he was more spontaneous, wanted more fun in life. Upon his death, Sheila was left with a large amount of money. I don't know the exact amount, but my rough calculations place it over $200,000. Most of all, she had been so practical her whole life, I don't think she knew how not to come to work. Sheila continued to work because she didn't like always being alone, and she was terribly alone, or so she felt. She once told me she just came to work to hang out with me. I loved Sheila. We were as close as two people so different in age could possibly be. Her laugh is the best. It can bring a smile to anyone's face. So animated when she talks, it makes for a great conversation. Soon after she started talking to this so-called guy, he sent flowers, perfume, chocolates, letters. He did all of the romantic things most women want. Still, I wasn't convinced though. Not to mention appalled that she had given her address to him. She said that she could trust him. Anyway, as I said, Sheila was head over heels. Every day she came to work, walking on air. I'd never seen her so happy. Hell, I was newlywed, and I wasn't that happy. Still, no matter how excited she was, I was not sure about this guy. Even though I'd heard some stories, this was a few years before catfishing and the like were widely spoken about everywhere, so even though I was suspicious, I wasn't positive. I told her to slow down and to not make any commitments until she'd spent some time in person with him. He would be in town the following week and she could decide what to do then, I told her. Sheila had booked a hotel room for him. He didn't feel it would be proper to stay at her house since they were just meeting. He wanted to be a gentleman, he assured her. Sheila and I went shopping for a new outfit and she got her hair done, the whole 9 yards. I offered to go pick him up at the airport with her, but she didn't want me to go. The day finally came, a Friday, so she'd taken that Friday and Monday off to spend some time with him. I told her to call me as soon as she got home from the airport. Fast forward, Sheila was to pick him up at 4 p.m. I knew she'd call by 6 probably. When I didn't hear from her by 6:30, I called her. It went straight to voicemail. I called again, then again. I was starting to panic. I was about to drive the route to the airport when she finally called at around 9 p.m. She was sobbing, but home safe. I told my husband I needed to go be with her and headed to her house. She was red-faced, still sobbing, when I got there half an hour later. She told me that the guy was being held by immigration in Amsterdam and had tried to work with the officials to convince them to let him go on the plane, to no avail. He had put his money in a carry-on bag, which they had confiscated his bag, and he had no money, no ID, and they would not let him on the plane. His business associates had been kind enough to put him up and pay off the officials, but now with no credit cards, ID, nothing, he had no idea how he would manage. It sounded far-fetched to me, but I knew nothing about immigration or travelling through Amsterdam, but what I did know is that it didn't sound right. My suspicions were raised once again. I knew it would be okay because now this guy would be out of her life. Finally, I was happy, but the look on her face told me it wasn't over yet. A few days later, he stated his business associates had bailed him out of the trouble, but now they were holding the money they owed him until he paid them back what he owed them. Sheila suggested they just take out the money they owed him. He said they did things differently there and he would need to pay them first. He had previously told her his brother was a missionary. He stated his brother was on a mission trip in Ghana and was coming to get him. He suggested if she could send the money to the brother, he could pick it up and when he arrived back in the US, he would pay her back. She sent his brother in Ghana $3,700. A lump rose in my throat. I knew she was being misled, but I didn't know how I could convince her this didn't make sense. Night after night, he wooed her with sweet words. Here's another example of the messages they exchanged via the internet. This gives a better picture than just me explaining.
Hello, my beautiful bride. I send sweet kisses across the ocean to land on your beautiful cheeks and lovely lips. To hold you in my arms is what I awake thinking of, and the tender words you speak are the song I fall to sleep to. I am so excited for the day I can call you bride. I wait for the day we are a family. Since the losing of my first wife and son, all I have wanted to be is a family with someone. You are that person, my real family. Good night, my love, your protector, lover, husband.
And the crap just went on like that. About a month after the immigration incident, he fell very ill and once again had to cancel a trip to see her. She was once again devastated. He revealed to her during the chaos they did not take health insurance, and he had to pay in cash. He said he still had no credit cards from when they were lost during the confiscation of his bag at the airport. Now he had no money for the doctors and hospitals. She asked many questions, which he always had what sounded to her like reasonable explanations for. They sounded like bullshit to me, but she wouldn't hear of it. In this unfortunate set of circumstances, he needed to have his gallbladder out and his brother was coming to help him. If only he had $7,000 for the operation. If he did not have the operation, he might die. Working for a medical group, you'd think that she would be smart enough to see it this time. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case though. She sent him money to his brother, and for about a week she heard nothing from him. Of course, he was recovering from his surgery, and that's why he didn't call. Inward, my eyes rolled when she said this. I smiled and gave her a pat on the back.
I'm sorry,
I said. Nothing else to say, really. Sheila began to put distance between us and our friendship barely existed outside of work. I remained steadfast, never losing sight of the friend I knew would soon need me. She would need me when she found out this guy wasn't who he said he was. Situations like the hospital one happened again and again and again. Each time, something different. One night, he called her saying some money he'd sent to her was now missing from the Western Union system and it would take 30 days for them to reimburse the claim. He said it was all of the extra money he had. He told Sheila he would have no money for food or hotel expenses. He pleaded for her to return the money. But, of course, she never got the money he said that he sent. Sheila finally stood up to him and said she didn't have any more money. He got infuriated and hung up on her. About 20 minutes later, she received this email. She forwarded it to me because she was quite upset. Here's what it said.
Sheila, I thought you loved me. No love for me. You want me to starve in the streets? You want me to die? Fine, bitch. I will die of hunger in the street. No room to stay in. I will die. But I will make sure I hurt you and your family before I die. I know people who will come to you. They will kill because I say to. You will die, bitch. Hate me? Will I hate you? You'll soon see. Die, bitch.
Sheila's reply was this.
Please, don't say those things to me, my love. You are the heart inside of me. I love you more than anyone. Please do not call me names. It hurts me and makes me think that you may be mean when we're married. Please, my love, forgive me. I love you so much. I'll send you the 2,000 plus an extra 200 in case of any other things that might happen. Please, be my love. I will send the money tomorrow morning when the bank opens.
And so she did. I was actually beginning to dislike my friend. First, and this might sound selfish, my husband and I were having really hard times financially, and she'd never offered us any help. Selfish, yes. But it did hurt to see her struggling while she sent thousands to a man she'd never met. I was angry at how stupid she'd become. I was angry that money she had because of her husband's death was being spent on a strange man. I was angry at everything. Most of all, I was angry at the fact that this woman I loved and respected had turned into a mindless idiot. One day, at lunch, she leaned in as if to tell me a secret.
I'm putting in my notice. What notice?
I asked.
2 weeks here at this dump office. I'm quitting.
I was actually happy, thinking she'd come to her senses and would get out of here and do things she dreamed of.
Really? That's great. I mean, I'll miss you, but glad you're going to get out of here and enjoy life. Yeah, I'm going on mission trip with Kensington and his brother. We're all going to Ghana.
My heart dropped and then raced like a hummingbird's wings.
Ghana? You've never met him, Sheila. I don't know if this is a good idea. Have you talked to your kids? Are you sure you're up to this trip? This doesn't sound great, Sheila. Hell no, I haven't talked to my kids about it. They try to stop me, and I want to live and learn to love again. As for traveling, he's going to help me. Sheila, I'm not sure this is love. Has he ever paid you money he owes you? No, but husbands don't pay back their wives, silly. He's not your husband. You'll see.
She picked up her food, dumped it in the trash, and walked out. A few weeks later, I was at her house helping her pack while still trying to talk her out of this. She went. She left me the key to her house, told me where all of the important documents were, placed me as an authorized user of her bank account in case of an emergency, and I, being a stupid idiot I am, drove her to the airport. She called me when she got there. She sent pictures of her with this man, not a 30-something Brad Pitt, but a 22-year-old Ghana resident who worked at a cafe. You guessed it, an internet cafe. In the pictures, she was smiling, but it was not that over-the-moon smile she'd left with. It was forced. Before she left, Sheila and I had made a danger phrase. When she used this phrase, it meant that there was something that put her in danger. I tried to research this missions group she was going to travel with and help, but I could not find any internet presence of them. She said it was a small group and they did not want to waste money on websites, but that they were sponsored by a very famous evangelist. I started to feel really scared when I called the evangelist headquarters and his people said that they were in no way connected to this organization. In fact, they'd never heard of them. I was terrified now, but I talked to her just a few days before and she hadn't used the phrase and just seemed off from her normal personality. Sheila had been gone about 6 weeks when I got a call from her. My blood ran cold when she said,
Jason is doing great. Just talk to him.
That was the phrase. The I'm in danger phrase. She hung up a few minutes later. I still had no idea of her exact location. Her IP address changed all the time, and she called from a different number almost every time as well. I knew it wasn't my business, but I went back to the bank and asked for a printout of that month's transactions. In all, Sheila had taken out $12 grand. She soon called and asked me to withdraw $3,200 and send it to some person I'd never heard of. When I asked why I couldn't send it to her, she seemed weird and blew me off as she demanded I send it. I was too scared not to. I knew she was in trouble, so I did it. After I sent the money from her account, I called the police and they gave me about 1,000 people to talk to and no one could help me. I called the embassy, but they also seemed uninterested. No one could help me find Sheila. Now, I hadn't heard from her in over a week. I continued to try and get help, but again, this was before scams were all over the internet and the government started to put manpower into cracking down on it. I don't think the feds had a clear grasp on what was really happening on the internet dating sites. To this day, there's no real laws to protect women from this, especially when they have handed over the money of their own free will. She left for the mission trip 5 years ago. The last time she called, 4 years ago. By then, she'd withdrawn all but $72. The bank finally closed the account for lack of activity. I haven't heard from Sheila in 4 years. A few emails written by Kensington or one of his crew, but nothing from her. I know she didn't send the email as well, because it sounded nothing like her. 5 years later, we still pray we will one day see Sheila's beautiful face again. I fear, though, that we won't. I like to believe that she fell so much in love that she didn't want us to ruin things, but I know that isn't true. I know Sheila is dead, and we will never be able to give her a proper goodbye. I tell this story to warn people. I know many people might be younger, more aware individuals, but there are a million ways they lure you in. Many women are naively drawn into these scams. They are drawn in from loneliness, desperation, grief, and any number of things. No matter how young you are, how savvy you think you are, these people make manipulation their full-time job. They will learn your weaknesses and they will use it. This isn't a typical catfish. It's not about some old pervy guy looking for young girls. This is about people of all ages. Men are no exception. There are women around the world doing this to men as well. Since I began trying to find Sheila, I've met lots of people who have the same stories, but were lucky enough to escape the situation before leaving to meet one of these creeps. Please listen. This is about your life and the life of your loved ones. Please be careful about who you trust. I don't want to hear of any more Sheilas. G'day mates, it's Busta here. Well, I've heard of these types of catfish stories where an operation from overseas manages to capture people, but hearing a real story is really chilling. Be sure to stay safe out there, Hive members. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video, guys. Thanks again to the Hive members that bravely shared their stories for us all here. And for the chance to have your story feature in a video, you can send your story to my email, which is in the description below. And as always, keep them coming, guys, as this channel relies upon your stories to continue. Also, please do me a favour and just state in your email what your story is about in the description, and also provide me with a short written statement of consent just so that I can be above board with everything. And be sure to remember as well to tell me in the email if you would like to remain anonymous, and change any names if you don't want particular names to be shared. So more than a few of you guys have said that you'd be willing to actually support me through something like Patreon, which is really awesome. I spoke about it in the last video that came out, and because of that response, I've actually set up an account now and have put it in the description below. So if you would like to help me go full-time on YouTube and support me financially, then please visit the link below and consider becoming a patron. The way it works is that you can choose however much you would like to give for each video that I produce. This source of consistent revenue, I'm hoping, will provide me with enough to get by on so that I can go full-time on YouTube and bring you guys more and more content here on the channel. And a big shout out to all those who have actually started to give. Thank you guys so much. I honestly cannot tell you how much I really appreciate your support and to help me go full-time on YouTube. As always, guys, it would be awesome if you could like, share, comment, and subscribe if you're new. Don't forget to follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for updates throughout the week. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'll see you mates in the next one.